G'day guys, welcome back to SuperCoach with DR and welcome to the round 7 stock market video. A tough week for many coaches with, I'd say, a 2100 plus score being above par for the rounds. In the last couple we've seen lots of 2300 plus type scores, but yeah, it was a tough week for many coaches. Why was that? Well, we did have a fair few underperforming uber primos. Jack McRae for his standards, 107. That's not what you want from him. Jack Steele went below the ton this week. And obviously the big one was Max Scorn. And if you had have put the captain on him, that would have been an absolute disaster because small decisions like that can go a long way in going up or down the rankings. But we did have some premiums that bounced back. One for me was Jaden Short in my back line with a 113. And there were some more question marks raised on some of these potential keepers. So I'm talking about CJ, who went below 50. What do you do with him if he goes around the 50-60 mark again this week? Another one is the big Texan, who we see going down the bottom of this chart now. What do you do with him? Is he still the keeper that you thought he may be? Look, he's still right up there in averages and total points, not just for forwards in SuperCoach in general, but he has had an easy draw. Yeah, some big decisions around him. But the obvious one this week is our rookie up the top of the chart, Frederick from Port. We'll talk about him. A really good buy this week. And the other man next to him, Stephen May, the definition of a fallen premium. We'll talk about him a little bit, let you know what my plans for May are. Shai Bolton, a really interesting forward selection. It's such a tough line to choose from this year. Bolton's a really interesting one though. Talked about Tex. And unfortunately, Jordan Ridley for current owners is about to lose a lot of cash. For non-owners, this is absolutely wonderful. An absolute godsend for you. But just to make it clear, even though I've got the sell on the bottom of the chart, that's just to represent that when players start to move down and they break even reaches a really, really high level, that it may be an opportunity to get rid of them. But someone like a Jordan Ridley, do not trade him out if you're a current owner. He'll come back. And remember that every man and his dog that doesn't own Ridley will be jumping on him. So without speaking too much more in the introduction, let's get straight into it. You know where we start. Let's see who's on top of the premium defender chart. Now, I think that the majority of these players will end up in the top 10 for averages by the end of the season. Christian Salem up the top, 542k with a season averaging of 106, 3 rounds of 126, which looks really nice. A break even of only 53. Look, I think he's an outside chance. Maybe I'm not giving him enough credit, but I'd much rather, for example, a Luke Ryan, who I know has been injured lately, but at a similar price, I know that there's 6 points difference on the season average, but I just trust Ryan a lot more than what I trust Christian Salem. So the two that I'm really not a fan of, I suppose, from this list are Salem and Sam Doherty. Doherty's okay. Look, knocking out 100 most weeks. That's what his average is anyway, 101. So, look, not a terrible selection, but just I've never really been interested in the pick. So all the other blokes that you see on the screen, so Mills, Ryan, the Seagulls, Stewart, Laird, Rich and Ridley, I've highly considered at some stage. So with Mills, he's got the role reversal symbol there. That's new for this week because he went back to the defensive line for Sydney. Started off, I think, as a key post even. So I don't love this in SuperCoach. I like when players have a consistent role from week to week. So Callum Mills for me, still a really, really good selection, but I'd be a little bit hesitant bringing him in this week. I just want to see what happens with him next week. See what happens when, who are they missing? Dame Rampy down back. See what happens when he comes back into the side. But Callum Mills, going to be a good selection, I think, in 2021. But yeah, just a question mark, I think, on what his role is actually going to be consistently moving forward. Luke Ryan has been injured, but I know that when I brought him in last year, how many rounds were there to go? Maybe 6 or 7 rounds. I can't remember exactly. But he did perform pretty well. Was injured in one of those games, so got a bit of a lower score. But bounced back the next week after that, where I didn't think he was going to get up for the game. Went 100 plus, and he's got a big ceiling, this bloke. So, yeah, I think when he hits form, he may be a solid option. If you're looking for your last upgrade after the buys, and I say this a lot with Luke Ryan, I think he could be a good selection for us. Doherty, as I said, not a huge fan, but you can go there if you want. The Seagull, we've probably seen his ceiling lower, I think, this year due to Dawson. Look, still 67% of the kick-ins over the weekend. That's a good sign for Lloyd, but wouldn't it be even better if it was around the 80% mark? But the Seagull, I just think, is an ultra-safe selection. If you're not a current owner, I think he's good buy. Even with a break-even of 120, he's not a desperate trade-in by any stretch, but he's just going to be a consistent performer, and I think pretty much a lock for the top 6 defenders for this year. Tommy Stewart, talk about a lock for the top 6, probably a lock for the top 3 at this stage. There's going to have to be a few blokes that need to catch up pretty quickly, I think, to get up there with Tom Stewart. You can see Mills only has 1 point off that season average of Tom Stewart, but just in fine form lately is Tommy. 3-round average of 125, apart from Salem. Yeah, that's the average that really sticks out of this list. Break even of 121, so I don't think he's going to get to the 600k mark. He's not a 600k type player, I don't think, but he's certainly a 540 to 580 type player, Tom Stewart. So whenever the time's right, I think he'll be a really good trade-in, and I actually like his buy as well. Just get out of the way with nice and early. Rory Laird, I said this in my round review, it seems like it's a couple of okay weeks and one down. May throw in a 115 plus here and there, but it's been a really inconsistent season from Rory Laird, and going forward, I really don't know what to expect in regards to an average. I may need to temper my expectations on the Laird average this year. He was an absolute no-brainer selection for me pre-season, and I had him in my top 5 locks in SuperCoach. I just thought that it was a non-negotiable to start with Laird, but yeah, if you're looking at his average, it's only 100, so you've got blokes like Doherty that are averaging more for the season, and that's just a bit of a shock to the system. When you do compare his average to this list, he's bottom of the list, averaging 6 less than Christian Salem on the season. So I'd almost say very disappointing looking at that now, Rory Laird. But look, he's renowned for his consistency. It's been a little bit off this year. Adelaide are now coming into a bit of a tougher period of the season after having a pretty friendly draw to start off with. I think that Laird's still going to be a pretty good selection, but my plan at some stages during the season was to maybe even leave him as my M8. That's probably not going to be enough for an M8 at this stage. So disappointing Laird, but I think most of us have him in the community anyway. Dan Rich, again, been talking about him for the last month now, I think. I haven't brought him into my side personally, but he's someone that I would take a really, really close look at. He's a real pod back there, similar to someone like a Jared Lyons in our midfield. He's underrated as a SuperCoach selection, Richie, and I suppose it's because we don't see any 160 plus type scores from him, but he'll hit the ton on a regular basis, always up there. What's that, 57% of the kick-ins? I think Birchall took every other one, so Birchall was about 43%. You'd love that 57 to be closer to a 65-70 at least, but I think on most occasions it will be closer to that. Sometimes one of these players might be off the field, the opposition team may kick 3 quick behinds, and it's obviously got to go to the second in line for the kick-in. So I really like Rich as a selection. 3-round average of 106 and a season average of 103. A really consistent type player. The break-even's obviously in red, but I certainly don't think that he'll be going down too much. At the same time, won't be going up in price, I don't think either. And Jordan Ridley, 540,800. Average of 108 on the season now. Geez, that's disappointing, isn't it? So disappointing. Obviously, it's due to that injury-affected game where he was unfortunately concussed. 3-round average of 81. Again, very much due to that game. Did have an 88 on the weekend, so not his finest performance. Actually, his second worst performance of the year. So 2 weeks in a row with some poor scores from Ridley. Or when I say 2 weeks in a row, 2 scores in a row from him. I still think that he's going to be an absolute must-have this year. Either way, if you've got him, you don't trade him out. And if you haven't got him, you've almost got to trade him in. So I don't really see a team without Jordan Ridley in the next 2 weeks. I think you've just got to get this bloke in if you don't have him. 57% kick-in rate is a little bit concerning. We know Heppel took a couple. That's not great for Ridley because he was clearly, for all clubs, the number one, or had the highest percentage for kick-ins out of any club. So, yeah, slightly concerned with Ridley, but remember, he has just come back from a concussion, and it can take players a week or two just to find their groove again. But a break-even of 204, what a godsend for non-owners, and I'm really jealous of non-owners. Even though I own Ridley, geez, I'd love to get him in at sub 500k, which I think you'll be able to do. But look, I'm hoping for a 120 plus score again this week, and I don't think there's any reason to see why he couldn't get there again. On to the defenders, 250k to 500k. The man up the top, Jacob Kazitsky, I'm absolutely spewing that I traded him out too early. I just didn't see that big game. But as we know with these plays, if you are patient, a big game is just around the corner. We saw him do it in the preseason, but it's obviously a completely different ball game when you're translating that into the AFL season. But yeah, if you've still got him, keep him for another week or two, and then he's ripe for the picking, I think. Either downgrade him or upgrade him in round 9, I think. Even round 8. We'll see how he goes this week. Stephen May, he is my buy now for this week. I'll talk about him in a minute. I'll just skip through some of the blokes that aren't too relevant. One of them being Tom Jonas. We'll see a lot of Port Adelaide defenders running through this list for the rest of the season, I think. Jordan Butts has been a pod rookie for me this year. Almost hit the 300k mark. Remember, we did spend about 170 odd on Butts to start with. So that price, yeah, is not as friendly as what it looks. We didn't pay 123k for him, but he's done everything that I've asked of him this year. Jordan Butts came in for a couple of weeks, delivered me some nice scores. One time it was a pretty dud type score, but that's what Butts does. His pattern is 1 up, 1 down, 1 up, 1 down. So an 80, 40 odd, 80 something, 40 odd. So that's the pattern for Butts, and I think the ideal situation if you're a Butts owner is to just leave him in your side until the buys and then flip him then. But in my personal situation, I may need to cull him a little bit earlier, possibly even this week, which looks like a crazy move looking at these numbers, but I suppose that I need to look at moves like this in order to facilitate future moves. Caleb Daniel, I will come back to talk about in a little bit. Ben McAvoy, yeah, look, he's playing okay in the ruck, but 421,000. The only advantage is that he's got that DPP, but is it a real advantage? It's a hard DPP to make use of, isn't it? Aliria, he's probably been the in-form defender at Port at the moment, with a 3-round average of 111, which stands clearly above every other player on this list. Actually, his teammate Jonas is next in line with 103. So another example of these Port Adelaide defenders. But if you look at that average on the season, 97, it's only 3 points under Rory Laird, and that's crazy. So is he a valid selection? Is he relevant? Well, if Laird is, he's only 3 points behind. So I suppose you could say that he is relevant this year. A super pod with a great buy. So that would be a real wacky move. But again, if you look at the list of players that we talked about in the 500k plus range, there's really no one here apart from a couple maybe that you'd look to take, I don't think. Isaac Cumming, been a great starting selection for those that did. Orazio, I think he's on the chopping block now. 1 point difference between his projected score and break even. So not a desperate trade out, but if you're looking to get Frederick in this week and you've got Orazio down there in the defensive line, that is just a no-brainer trade for me. Sam Taylor, 423,000, not too relevant I don't think, but giving him a bit of respect with a 95 for a 3-round average. Pasha Hooley, 100 average for the season, not with his durability, not at his age. Could work out okay, but I couldn't trust Pasha myself. Lockie Ash, been a real breakout season from him. I think his average of 91 is pretty realistic for the rest of the season. Nick Cox, another bloke on the chopping block this week. Even though his break-even is in red with a 62, his projected score is higher than that, 6 points. So he's actually projected to go up 2,600 this week. He's the yin-yang. We know that he can go really good, get you a 90, and then he can go really low and get you a 20 to a 30. So hopefully for owners, that's closer to a 90. But yeah, certainly a candidate to be traded out this week, I think. Jacob Wiedering, again, not really relevant. You'd rather a Sam Doherty, wouldn't you? But 457,000. He's got a 3-round average of 100, which is okay. And Lockie Young, the last player on this list, is certainly on the chopping block, I think, for me. You look at his average on the season, that's 68. That's been okay, I suppose, for Lockie with a defensive mid status. But given the fact now his break-even is at 72, I'd look to get rid of him in the next week or two, I think, if you got him. So we'll quickly go back up to Caleb Daniel. Look, we know what happened with Daniel. Got suspended against the Lions, only knocked out in 19. Obviously missed a week after that. Still looked mediocre the week after, but last week, a 34 possession game against the Tigers. And people that held on to Daniel would be absolutely celebrating this selection at the moment. But it is only 1 week of really good form. They've got Bailey Dale there at the moment, who's also distributing out of halfback, taking some of the kick-ins. And you've also got Bailey Williams, who's currently not in the side due to injury, and I think he's due back in the next fortnight. So that's a major concern for me with the Daniel selection this week. We don't know what his role is going to be moving forward when Williams comes back into the side. We know that he's going to be playing out of the back line, but how much of the ball will he be getting? I don't know if it's going to be 30 plus every week or most weeks for that matter. It's a bit of a guess at the moment. So for me, I'd almost rather pay a little bit extra and see what he's like when Williams comes into the side, because he's not going to shoot up to 500k or anything like that, I don't think. So I don't like the selection this week, even though he's at a really good price, has a decent buy as well. I just think there are probably a few too many question marks for mine. So the player that I do like this week, and I do have the best buy on him, is Stephen May. So last 3 scores of 7, 94 and 145. So had that broken eye socket. Didn't he look terrible? I'm sure you've all seen the photos of him. Man, that looked like it would have hurt. But he's back in form, isn't he? 94 and a 145 in the past fortnight. And I suppose that big score last week really did consolidate the fact that he does have the potential to be a top 10 averaging defender from here on out. So at 408,600 with a break even of 5, he's looking to go up around 40k this week. So I think that he'll reach 500 probably within the next 3 to 4 weeks. So we know that some of our rookies at the moment are simply not generating cash. So this is also a really clever way, I think, of generating some cash. So if he can go up to 500k within the next 3 to 4, then you've made 100k on the May selection. So we know what his role is going to be. Takes a lot of the kick-ins. I always say kick-outs because you're kicking the ball out, but kick-in, sorry. But I suppose a few of the question marks in regards to May, well, first is his durability, but yeah, you've got to take a bit of a risk at 408,000. There's always going to be some concerns. There's a bit of a different setup there at the moment. Tomlinson's out, but I think Tom McDonald just fits into that role, and I don't think May is going to be affected. Bren Brown's obviously in the side as well. So, yeah, it's just too good to pass up, I think, the Stephen May selection this year. What do I think he'll average from here on out? I'm thinking a 95 plus. I think, and at 95 plus at 408k, that's good enough for me for my D6. Now, in saying this, I am going to be passing up on a Callum Mills, Lockie Whitfield, and who would I rather have? May, Whitfield, or one of these, Mills? Well, certainly Whitfield or Mills, but I'm looking at the price, I'm focusing on value, and Stephen May, I think, is the definition of value this week. So for me, he's going to be too good to pass up. 90% chance, I think, of making his way into my side this week. Blake Hardwick, so a real pod this year with a pretty healthy average, to be quite honest. Not a selection that I would have thought about at all pre-season, but I still don't think that many coaches are considering someone like a Hardwick, particularly with some of the, I suppose, more reliable or safer selections this year. But interestingly, he took 6 kickouts on the weekend and only played on 2 out of 6 times. So that's not ideal. He's lost some really easy points there. So not for me, but just throwing his name out there. Jordan Clark was in the 22 on the weekend, probably losing money in the short term, but now does have the potential in a couple of weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, to rise above 300k if all things go well. So just do what you want with him. DPP status is handy if you do need to trade him out, but certainly on the chopping block for mine. Jack Bowes, back to his more familiar role, would fill current owners, I think, with greater confidence. He's a top 10 defender, should certainly be around the mark and has a nice buy. Keep the watch on him. Heath Chapman was in the red last week, now majorly in the red, and that's compounded by a shoulder injury. Your easiest trade of the year, I think, as a Chapman owner, will be to trade him down to Freddie at 123k, who we'll talk about in a minute, but definitely has to go this week before he leaks more cash. May not even play though, so we'll just have to see what happens, but luckily I traded out Chapman last week. Zilliams, absolutely no. DBJ, too inconsistent. Good player though. Crisp, arguably the most durable player in the comp, but plays for Collingwood and not really a sexy pick. Lukosius, look, a future star, playing well on the wing, but not relevant, I don't think, this year. Now CJ, it was his worst score of the year, going under a 50, 49 I think it was. Now the question marks on his potential keeper status get bigger. If he drops another sub 50 next week, it might even be time to part ways. He's made some decent cash, but you wouldn't want to lose it, so monitor this week for mine. Hunter Clark, another future star. His skills were certainly on display last week. Kicked a brilliant goal after selling some candy. Not a top-tier defender, but a decent pod. Not for me, though. Sard copped a few boos on the weekend, but played well and certainly had the last laugh, but an average of 89 isn't enough for his price. Duday, look, he's strong, courageous, but too many better options at this stage. Harris Andrews got the roller coaster on him there. Clearly his best performance of the year. Marked everything that came his way. Gave Charlie a bit of a bath after probably lowering his colours to Mackay last week. But again, as I said, just a roller coaster every week. Shorty, back to his best last week with 113. Took exactly 50% of the kick-ins over the weekend and usable effectively, which was nice. He's been a bit up and down this year, so it'd be nice to see some more consistency and see more of his massive ceiling. Hopefully that's coming in the next month. Dan Houston, burn man for me last year. Look, things haven't gone to plan for him with a lowly 3-round average of 70 over the last 3 weeks, but 94 on the season as an average is okay. Puts him in the tier 2 defender list. Really like his buy, but will he play back? Will he play mid? It's probably a bit of a week-to-week proposition, but I actually don't mind the selection. Porter a good side. He's got a nice ceiling. Still a relative pod, so I'd track him for a week or two and then reassess probably for me. And then Brodie Smith, defensive mid option, a break even in the red of 136. If you started with him, hasn't been terrible, but hasn't been great. Pretty much a bit of a nothing pick here. And defenders under 250k, the best buy this week is Martin Frederick, brother of Michael from Freo, on the bubble with a season average of 81 after an impressive 88 and 74 in the last fortnight. Speedy, exciting type player that has a nice rookie ceiling as well. So it was 23 disposals in round 6, 16 last week, 6 marks in each as well. And with the lack of rookie scoring power this year, this bloke looks good. Major concerns are job security with Bonner breathing down his neck and Jones in a few weeks set for a possible return. But form suggests he holds his spot for now. With Port's depth, maybe only one performance away from getting dropped, but seems too good to pass up if he plays again this week. Look, be prepared for him to drop a sub-past 60 game at some stage, because I think an 81-point average may be hard to maintain long-term, but certainly I think the best buy this week in our defensive lines. Tommy Highmore, certainly got to play, doesn't he? Played well in the VFL, so fingers crossed. If he can't get in after a 30-possession game, then I don't think he's going to get in any stages here, to be quite honest. Nick Murray, key position player for Adelaide. Look, average of 50 isn't great, but he's on the bubble and comes at the lowest price point possible. I like Murphy as a selection and probably would be a trade-in for me if Freddie wasn't also available this week. He doesn't have Freddie's ceiling, but I rate his job security higher than I do Freddie's. So if you do value job security over, I suppose rapid short-term cash gen, then he may be your preference. But a likely type of player, and surely Collingwood just keep playing the kids now. They need to unearth their next gen and just drop blokes like Josh Thomas and these types and give the young fellas a run, I think. I know a couple of coaches went early on Freddie, so it wouldn't be a terrible D7, D8 combo for now. It's probably not going to be that, is it? Because most of us are still running with Highmore there, so maybe a D6 to D7, which is a little scarier. But I think he's more of a bench option. Murphy, 47, 55 is okay. He'll generate cash, but preferably on the pine for your team, and should net you about 10 to 15 possessions per game. So if you want to go for Nathan Murphy, you can, but yeah, I'd much rather Frederick, I think. Mark, not too keen on, much keener on Murphy at a cheaper prices on the bubble though. Parks played okay, it was his best game, but I think better options. Pryor, doing well, but yeah, you've certainly missed the boat, I think, on him at 190. Mansell, his short-term job security has improved, you'd think, after the injury to Grimes. Good for me as an owner, but going to be a slow burn, I think. Menadue, no. Came on early as a sub, I think. Stocker, no. Burgess, no. So you've really got, well, there's a few options, isn't there, if you have a look at the list, but there's one really obvious one, and that's Frederick, looking to rise 74k if he can hit a projected score of 81, which is obviously his average over the first 2 rounds. Look, Murray, you're getting for 102, so you're saving 21k, but I think their scoring potential, is on probably different levels after what we've seen so far. Murphy, as I said, I do like, probably better job security. Keane, you're paying 158 though for an average of 54, which is better than Murphy's, you can see there, but yeah, what is it, 35k more. There's no way that you'd go Keane, so he's not viable this week. So yeah, a few options there, but Frederick, certainly the man for me. On to the mids, 500k plus. The man up the top, Darcy Parish, has the lowest break even out of this bracket, 41, certainly in the green there, looking to go up around 30k, 84% CBA attendance rate, which is really, really positive for him. In some ripper form, enjoying more responsibility in the midfield, but if only he had DPP status in SuperCoach, he'd be an absolute forward lock. But the issue as a mid only is that he's competing against some big names for a valuable spot in our midfield. Is he good enough to be our M8? I don't think he's in the same tier as young guns such as Walsh, Brayshaw, could possibly reach Taranto levels. I think he's gone past players like Simpkins, so it's up to you, but I can't see him fitting into my structure. Joel Selwood just keeps on keeping on, had a crazy season to date, thought he was past it, but you can never ride off a past SuperCoach champion, not for me though. Andy Brayshaw, 3 100 plus scores on the trot, battled through an ankle injury on the weekend, gone up over 500k, but still a great price. I'm a very happy owner and do recommend him as an M8. Plays the Lions this week who don't tag. We normally back our own midfield structures and processes and don't usually let the opposition dictate those matchups. Look, compare him to others around his price point and the data is good. So major risk is the tag, as we know, but by my predictions, shouldn't cop one for a while, I don't think. So Andy Brayshaw, you certainly have my blessing to bring him in this week. Brandon Ellis. Now, if you look at the numbers for Brandon, they are identical to Brayshaw's for the season and the 3-rounder. Ellis, obviously more of an outside role, certainly not a contested type like Brayshaw, but he's also in ripping form. Poor score of 62 in round 1, but then showing some really good consistency from then on. 103, 112, 90, 113, a 94, and a 143 last week to balance out that poor score of a 62 in round 1. I'd 100% go Brayshaw, but Ellis deserves a quick mention at the very least. Guthrie, I just can't deny him anymore. If you want a pod with a good buy, then grab him. Libba, he'll benefit from Dunkley's absence, but will it be enough for him to average, 105 to 110 as our M8? I suppose it's possible and would be a massive pod. Tuke Miller, entering the elite this year, loves the contest, great leader, consistent, tackles hard, which guarantees extra points each week, even if his disposal count is down. Traditionally was a tagger, but he's been let loose from that role now and is more of an attacking midfielder. Certainly does play a really good defensive role on his opponent, but has a lot more freedom these days. Could see him at 600k in a couple of weeks, and another big point of difference. Wines, I'm not really a fan of. Now, my boy Hugh, in stellar form, is a Rolls Royce, an elite wingman that has been close to BOG the last couple of weeks in a row. Now finding more consistency to his game, just oozes class. 573k is a lot to spend, and Lions seems a safer pick if looking for a bloke from Brisbane to fill that Neil void. But bookmark this, in 2024, there'll be a 3-way tie for the Brownlow Clugger. Walsh and Rao. But, similar to Walsh, his body's matured. Not the quickest player you'll see, but like Pendles, always seems to have time and space. In my biased opinion, a better player than McGrath and Taranto, who was selected before him. A pretty slow start to the year for Hugh with a high score of 88 over the first 3 rounds. Wasn't looking good at all, but his last month reads 103, 140, 128, and a 117, which is elite. I'd love to do it, but with Brayshaw and Walsh in my side already, maybe a third young gun is going a little far. Gaff, not for me. Old man Mundy, huge respect for this 2021 campaign of Mundy's. Couldn't bring myself to pay over 600k for a 63-year-old though. Walsh is a buy now, in my opinion. Now, you may look at the price, 606,300, but I think he's going to be a really, really solid option. Elite on the inside, elite on the outside, clearly the number 1 man at Carlton now, but if the opposition team do play a tagger, he has to go straight to Walsh. Why would you go to Cripps? He's just not damaging at the moment, but he can use his endurance to wear them out. I see him as a top 6 mid this year. It's still okay to bring him in at this price, and I don't see a huge amount of downside. He's just an absolute dead set SuperCoach gun, and Walsh should be one of our starting picks, for the next 8 to 10 years, I think. Travis Boak, soft tissue injuries at his age aren't really good. I would avoid for now. Josh Kelly, an obvious one for the role reversal symbol this week. I've received some messages from some very happy Kelly owners thanking me for my sacrifice. Obviously, the SuperCoach gods like the grape jelly, so finally tendered some CBAs, played more of a wing role this week. Jelly and Whitfield on the wings would be the best duo in the comp. I certainly wouldn't invest now because we can't trust Leon, but as an owner, I would certainly hold. But if Jelly can keep this role, I'll tell you what, in another week or two, if it's confirmed and you have a bit of trust for Leon Cameron, then you could jump on board. Titch, on repeat with him, current form doesn't warrant a spot in your midfield, even at this discounted price, and I'm saying this as an owner, I'll just avoid for now. Mitch Duncan, I'm not a fan, but probably deserves a little bit of respect. Clary, still at a good price for potential and predicted output. Durable, heaps of runs on the board, and will be a top 8 defender for sure. I'm all for Clary. Buy now if you haven't got him. The Bond, you can always seem to get him around the 550 mark at some stage, so that would be my preference, but still okay to get him now. One of the higher 3-round averages on the list. So if you like the Bond, no reason not to get him, I don't think. Zeret, hopefully his season average can get closer to his 3-round average. Certainly a mix for a top 10 average, but there are still better options though. I still want to see a lot more from Zach Merritt. JL, what a ripper he is. One of the best pods in the game and deserves so much more respect from the SuperCoach world. Attended a whopping 20 out of 22 CBAs. Low disposal efficiency prevented him from punching out a monster. But especially with Neil out for the medium term, there's a lot to like about this pick. He won't get tagged. I see Zorko or even McCluggage copying attention before him. So pretty low downside and will be a consistent scorer. I would highly consider for a pod. Fife, look, awesome year from him, but more of an end-of-year option for me, just simply due to his durability concerns. The cement bag, Karish and Petraka, just signed a new long-term contract. Great for the Ds. Look, not the most consistent 2021 campaign, but some of that's been due to his poor disposal efficiency. He did start well on the weekend, but seemed to fade out of the game a little bit. Maybe around the mark for a top 10. Definitely got the potential, but we need to see more, I think, before trading him in. Parker, a pod, but I'd pay up for Lions if you want a point of difference. McRae, a poor score over the weekend for his high standards, but the best SuperCoach mid in the game by a fair stretch and a non-negotiable must-have at some stage. I say it each week, sooner rather than later, and this is coming from someone who hasn't traded him in yet. So I've got a sneaking suspicion, though, that Curnow may go to him this week. It's just a gut feel, but as a non-owner, I really hope that that's the case. And Jack Steele, I may have overrated him slightly, a very poor 3-round average, but on a positive note, he'll be available at a really decent price in the next 2 weeks. The negative is his round 14 buy, but still love this selection. 166 for a break even. Yeah, you'd definitely wait probably another couple of weeks, but I think he'll be a wonderful trade in. He has been playing a little bit of time up forward, but again, with Ryder and Marshall back on the side, that's got to bode well for his scoring potential. Yeah, still really like the Jack Steele pick. On to the midfielders, 250, 500k. The man up the top, James Jordan, number 23. He's had a wonderful last 3 weeks, averaging 83, and has really slapped those people in the face who traded him early. I think your ideal mid structure at this stage is a primo M1 to M6, with Jordan and Powell rounding out your on-field positions. Time on grounds up was the next preferred option with Brayshaw after Track and Oliver for CBAs, and his role security strengthens short-term with Viney out. Great option to have on field. You'd be crazy to trade him out this week, I think. Keep on to James Jordan. Definitely a moneymaker. Drew, super player, but too inconsistent and risky. Hill, major trap, avoid. Same as Ross, terrible user of the ball. Tommy Powell, I mentioned him before. I've got the Superman symbol there, but after coming back in the second half after a near concussion and continuing to punch out a decent score when the D's were belting north, I'm so proud of this young fella. Physical, mental toughness was required, and he gained a lot of respect for his performance over the weekend. Do not trade, and he should be probably one of your last upgrades, I'd say. Warple doesn't use it well enough to be viable. Cunnington, what a performance. A contested masterclass, hit the scoreboard, and it really was a complete game, I think. Looks a lot older than what he actually is, although his body would be banged up. Never an uber primo, more solid than special, but if you're a bit of a risk taker, he could be for you. I wouldn't go near him personally, but I suppose you can if you want to. Heppel, a successful mid-price selection so far. I hope he doesn't hurt Ridley and take some points away, because he's a capable distributor from the back line. Nice average for what you paid, but probably not a keeper in our mids. I'd definitely consider him if he was a defender though. Taranto, in solid form. CBA count was slightly down, but he does find a lot of the ball and could go close to being an uber primo one day if you can improve his disposal. It's just not clean enough for him to produce those monster scores. Really nice score on the weekend though, don't get me wrong. Great 3-round average, but you wouldn't be looking to invest in Taranto, I don't think, at this stage. Tom Green, good player, but just don't trust him as a selection. Zach Jones played out of his skin on the weekend, but even with that massive score, only an 88 on the season. That's an 81 on the season, so just not good enough for mine. And Haitley, liked him pre-season, but no way at that price and average. Now, I'll try to save some time here and go pretty quickly through this list, because there's not too many players that are going to be relevant in our midfields. Look, if some of these blokes are available in our forward line, for example, I'd be all over him. Someone like a Carl Amon would be a terrific pod in our forward lines. He probably wouldn't be a pod, to be quite honest, if he was available in the forward line, because he's actually performing pretty well this year. But man up the top, Jai Simpkin, I've taken the trap off him to show him a little bit of respect, I suppose, but really disappointing if you started with him. Errol is firmly on the chopping block, I think, this week. You've probably got two options. Option one is to trade him out now, or option two is to probably keep him up until his buy and look to flip him then. So personally, I'll be looking to move him on this week. Well, they're the current plans at the moment, but there's also a chance that I'll just keep on to him. But it's a little bit dangerous holding him for 2 weeks and trading, particularly if he does go around that 50 mark, because he will start to leak a fair bit of cash. On the flip side, though, we know he's got a ceiling. If he comes out and scores a 90 this week, then all of a sudden that cash gen starts to get rolling again, and you'd be probably kicking yourself for trading him out too early. But how much more money does he have to make? It may be nothing, but he may be able to get up to 350k again, even 400 if he really shows that ceiling. But I think the issue is he's hit a little bit of a wall, had a wonderful season so far. I'm expecting him to have a rest probably in the next couple anyway. Ed Langdon, another pod there, but I'm not really interested in Langdon, even though he's had a really good season for Melbourne. Amon spoke a little bit about, but yeah, just really can't go there in your midfield, can you? Billing's a trap. Baz, let's see how he goes in the next couple, maybe, given the fact that Dunkley's gone. But it looks like Libba is probably going to take more responsibility than anyone. Andy McGrath, like as a player, not as a SuperCoach pick. LDU trap. Lockie Hunter trapped. Probably the most overpriced player in SuperCoach 2021, I think, to start the season. Sheed, look, I don't mind as a player in general, but in the SuperCoach sense, when you've got an average of 88 for the season, you're just not going to be viable in the midfield at 441k. Callum Ward, not a fan of this selection either. 423k suggests that there may be a little bit of value there. Something of note was the fact that he did attend 87% of CBAs on the weekend, which was up there in the top 5 for round 7 from all teams. So that's a really, really good sign for Cal Ward. If you want him in your side, then this is what he needs to be doing each and every week. And even then, I still don't really like him as a selection. And Brad Crouch is an absolute trap as well. He'll give you a couple of good games where he looks okay, but in other games, he'll still rack up the pill, but just won't use it well, and just not a viable SuperCoach selection, I don't think. And the midfielders under 250k. Joro, well, he can't even get in Freo's best 22 at the moment, unfortunately. McNeil has been the medical sub a couple of times. It's always scary when you're holding on to a bloke that's likely to be the sub. If he comes on later on in the game, you really are risking a one-digit figure score, I think. Lazaro looked okay, did some nice things over the weekend, but 160k, you don't look to go there. Guthrie from Geelong, very underwhelming type rookie. Will Phillips, extremely disappointing because pre-season, I think most coaches thought that this was one of the players in our midfield that would have the potential to score at a decent rate. But yeah, if you got him in at any stage during the season, it's been a bad move, unfortunately. Just a real slow burn. Finn McGuinness, he's been the system for a couple of years now, but again, look, he's on the bubble, but he's going to be a very, very slow burn, and his break-even is actually above his average. So, geez, it'd be crazy to invest in Finn McGuinness. Sam Berry, yeah, this bloke just doesn't have the ceiling, I don't think, to generate us a lot of cash. But all he needs is a 70 to 75 plus game to get it rolling again. Unfortunately, I just don't know if I see that coming. Just doesn't find enough of the ball. Loves to tackle, but even his tackle count has been down recently. Not the best user of the ball. I think I actually mentioned in my round review as well that it may have to take, a 2 to 3 goal effort maybe from Berry, and he's not the best kick for goal as we've seen before. So he's a slow burn. He could be on the chopping block this week, but for me, I'm probably just going to try to ride him out for a little bit longer and just hope that he pulls something magic out and gets me a 60 plus. And Tanner Bruin, yeah, damn. Average of 29, 3-round average. It's no good. I'll just be looking to move him on at this stage, I think. On to the rucks. Thilthorpe is now on the bubble. Unsurprisingly, couldn't back up his performance against the Hawks, but seems like a player, massive unit, good job security, I think, and really handy DPP status. On the downside, a 202k first year key forward for Adelaide. Doesn't scream scoring potential. We have seen a ceiling though, but it was an exceptional game against pretty low grade opposition. I suppose you could downgrade from a row, make 30k, but up to you if you want to bring him in. Would you be tempted to even trade out the bloke that's number 3 on this list? An option, but not for me. Campbell played in the weekend, did okay, but I'd just much rather Thorpey. I might actually name Thilthorpe Ian. Nickname him Ian, actually, after the great Aussie gold medalist swimmer, because I think Thilthorpe's a bit annoying to say. But yeah, we might go with Ian from now on. Big O, love him but no. Hickey is actually leading the Swans coaches votes after Mills by about 10, which is unreal. Talk about a miracle recovery as well. Geez, he was back earlier than expected, Tom Hickey. A really successful starting pick that's rewarded those that took the risk. Nank the Tank, one of the informed ruckmen in the comp at the moment, and someone that as a player you just love to play alongside. Aggressive, physical, not the best athlete, but a real workhorse. A real point of difference this year, but yeah, I couldn't go there myself. Big Brody must have my captain for last week and didn't let me down. Get him in if you don't have him. Not much else to say about Grundy. Darcy, poor game of the weekend from him. Very tough to score well against Nick Nat, who's next on the list. But yeah, 102 for an average from Nick Nat just isn't enough. Rob, bit up and down. Lysette, no. Don't go near the peanut. And Big Bad Max, he left owners a little shock last week and delivered a very disappointing captain score. And for many, yeah, it was one of those weeks where I was much keener on Grundy coming up against the Gold Coast ruck setup, which is basically non-existent. And Goldie, even though he's a little bit older, yeah, he's still one of the better ruckmen in the comp, I think. But for Gawn, it was his lowest CBA count for the year by a mile, only attending 18 out of 31 CBAs, with Jackson attending the other 13, which is pretty high for him. Low possession count for Gawn, no real impact with his usual intercept possessions, and just a down game in general against an old warhorse in Goldstein, as I said. So sets lose some cash, but remember, it's not out of the realms of possibility that he gets within 40 to 50 points of that 223 break even, but an absolute must-have for me. Look, it is a little bit concerning that Jackson took over the ruck duties for an extended period of time, particularly in the second half, but Gawn, I think, is a definition of a must-have. Long story short, if you don't have Gawn or Grundy, you are leaking points. On to the forwards, 500k and over. What a sad-looking bunch we've got here. The three blokes at the bottom, Dunkley, Butters and Danger, obviously all injured at the moment, not returning at any time soon. If these blokes are available, they're the type of players that I'd be selecting in my side. But the forward line is in shambles at the moment, particularly in regards to our premiums. So the man up the top, Jack Zeeble, I think we've all got him by now. There must have been a stage over the last, 6 weeks that you brought this man into your side. If you haven't, I just don't know why. So he's almost reached the 600k mark. Who would have thought that, Jack Zeeble? But he's got a break even in the green of 77, a projected score of 149. That's pretty big, isn't it? But you never know with Jack Zeeble. He's shown that he can reach that sort of score already this year on a couple of occasions. So you've got to have him if you don't. But now, geez, you're paying a lot for him, aren't you? And Rowan Marshall, look, the concern for me over the weekend was the fact that he only attended 31% of total CBAs, with Ryder attending the other remaining. So what's that? 69%. So you'd want that split probably going in Marshall's favour, ideally, but we know that Marshall is a more capable forward and Ryder's obviously a really capable ruckman. But the thing with Marshall and Ryder is the fact that they've both got some durability concerns at the moment. Ryder probably more than Marshall simply due to his age, but we know that Rowan's had that foot issue and it did flare up during the season as well. So it's always a risk when you're selecting players that have had these issues during the season, even pre-season. It can put me off a lot of the time. So I don't think this is the ideal time to bring in Marshall. I'd want to wait just a little bit. He has lost a little bit of cash there as well. Break even is 97. That shouldn't be in the green either. That should be in the red because it's obviously above the 89 mark there. So look, he's looking to go up 2k with a projected score just above the ton. So you can go him if you want. I'm definitely looking to get him into my side at some stage of the season, but his buy is an absolute killer. So possibly may even be my last forward upgrade if he's looking good after round 14, after he's had his buy. But yeah, long story short, absolute shambles here. Zeeble, you've got to have. I think he's a bit of a non-negotiable. Rowan, I think, will be a solid option, but that CBA count does concern me a little bit along with his foot. In saying that, though, out of the other options that we've got, and we'll check some others out at a lower price point in a minute, he's probably one of the better options available. Onto the forwards, 250 to 500k. Dev Robinson finds himself on this list for the first time this year, priced at 255,000 on the dot, with a season average of 71, 3-rounder of 67. Break-even is now negative 14, so looking to go up about 35k if he can go around the mid-60s. So he's been a bit of a pod rookie selection this year. I know George and a couple of the other boys have jumped on him and are pretty happy with him at this stage. The reason why I wasn't a huge fan of bringing him in last week was the fact that Reece Matheson made his way back into the side, and I thought, look, with Zach Bailey and co also going through that midfield most likely, I just don't know if Dev will get enough time in there to, I suppose, validate the price that we were selecting him for last week. But look, if there's a rookie that you want on field, I think Dev Robinson's one of the safest out there at this stage, and can see him going around that 70 average, I think. Darcy Cameron, look, keep the watch on him, but I'm not a fan of Cameron personally. Luke Jackson looked awesome on the weekend, so if he spends as much time in the ruck as he did, particularly in that second half, then he could actually be a viable selection. You'd have to have big kahunas to bring him into your side, but he's at a pretty decent price at 385. That 3-round average is in 3 digits, right on 100, but the season average is 74. And when you've got a ruckman such as Max Gawn, who is so dominant, you probably don't see Jackson spending a heap of time in there. But in saying that, Maxi can be really dangerous back, forward as well. So, given his performance over the weekend, I do expect his ruck time to increase, but probably not enough for him to be really viable. But I'd much rather Jackson at his price as compared to a Tommy McDonald, his teammate, for example. Jake Stringer, Trap, just so inconsistent, but looks really good at stages when he's in the centre bounce there. Harry Mackay, I can't read the key forwards this year. Just keep a watch on him. I can't put the trap on him. Peter Wright, I'm going to put the trap on because I don't think he'll play ruck. He'll go back to key forward and, yeah, just won't score enough. Will be way too inconsistent. Zach the Rat Bailey, one of my favourites. I did make a sacrifice for him to the SuperCoach gods, and they did reward him with a nice game. But I just don't know how much mid-time he's going to get. And even with Neil out of the side, we saw a number of other players rotate through there. And Chris Fagan did mention that the solution to Neil out was just to rotate a lot more players through. There's Jared Berry is out as well. I don't think that he comes back this week. Again, that's pretty much a week-to-week proposition. It's a groin injury, and Fags couldn't really put a time frame on it. So it could be next week, it could be the week after, another month. It's just an injury that you need to monitor and can't make too many plans going forward. So look, there is the opportunity for Bailey to spend more time in the midfield. As his career progresses, he is without a doubt going to be a midfielder and has all the tools, I think, to be an elite midfielder. Probably disposal isn't awesome, but a really solid kick for goal. Impacts the game, does hit the scoreboard on a regular basis as well. And at 387,000, if you are looking for a player that there's a fair bit of risk about, but has a lot of potential upside at a decent price, then he could be a man. Has that mid-forward status to throw in as well as an added bonus. Yeah, look, I'd like to see him for another week if possible, but then again, if he does score well again, you will have to pay over 400k for him. So I was looking really closely at him at the start of the season because I do expect him to break out at some stage. It may be not this year with Brisbane's midfield depth, but going into the future, I think he'll be an absolute gun, Zach the Rat. Joey Danaher, he's been a really solid starting pick now. 386,000, so made some really nice coin. Still with a low break even of 39, in ripping form at the moment, Joey. And I'm wrapped, not as a SuperCoach trainer, I don't have him, but as a Brisbane Lions supporter, obviously. So thank you very much, Joey, for your form over the last couple of weeks. Almost wrote this bloke off after seeing him play live against the Dogs. Just didn't go near it, didn't look interested. So, wrapped that he has hit some form and rewarding owners that started the season with him. Tommy Atkins, is he a keeper? Is he not? He's probably going to be borderline this year. With the options that we've got available, there's a high possibility that he could be around the top 10 mark for averages, but probably not, in my opinion. But at 404,000, you probably get what you pay for him with maybe a tad of value, I think. Connor Rozee, 325,300. Again, an absolute young gun of the competition. Durability's going to be a concern though. Doesn't play a SuperCoach friendly role, as talented as he is, and we know that he can hit the scoreboard. But yeah, when he starts to play full-time midfield, and I assume that that may be the plan in the next 2-3 years maybe, then he'll be an awesome selection. But too talented as a forward at this stage, and Port bat pretty deep in the mids. Chad Warner, now his break-even is in the red with the 63 as compared to his 3-round average of 61. No way that I'm trading out this bloke though. With the carnage that is the forward line in 2021, I'm just stoked that I've got Chad Warner. You can play him on field each and every week. Look, hey, he might give you 60 from time to time, but which rookie doesn't, to be quite honest? So he'll be one of my last forward upgrades, and I think if we're super desperate and things just go pear-shaped, you could even leave him as your F6 if things don't go to plan, I think. Tommy Lynch, absolute trap. Just can't stand this player. Cannot stand Lynch at all. Don't like him. And Shy Bolton, who I do have the buy now symbol on, but I'll say right from the start, this is a buy with caution. Now, we looked at his 3-round average. Clearly the best on this list with 110. And keep in mind, I'm trying to give at least one option where I'm saying buy now. He's certainly not a must buy now, but compared to the other options, I think he's got a bit of upside. Now, what is his upside? Well, when he plays through the midfield, he is super exciting, has a really nice ceiling, does everything that you want. So he gets clearances, can get some contested possession, obviously use his speed to burst away from the packs, get a 1-2 here and there. Just a really damaging type player. And I was speaking with Spills earlier on the week, and he's got a little bit of a theory that he's still unsigned at the moment, and he's maybe holding off and wants to demand a bit more midfield time, or actually full-time mid-time. And if he's played full-time through the midfield, Shy Bolton, he would be a terrific selection and someone who I would select with absolutely no hesitation. But the issue with Bolton is that when certain players come back into the side, he generally gets moved forward. He still runs through the midfield from time to time. There was a bit of a correlation last year when Prestia went out of the side. Shy Bolton's CBA attendances went right through the roof. So with Bolton, such an exciting type player, but is he going to be spending enough time in the midfield for him to be a really viable option? So for me, short term, the answer is yes. Long term, I'm not too sure. Remember, Trent Cotchin is out at the moment. I think it's with a hammy. RCD has come into the side. Dusty's been out. He comes back this week. Presti's been out. I think he also comes back this week. So I'm not sure how that affects Shy Bolton. Another positive to the Shy Bolton pick is the fact that he does regularly hit the scoreboard. Obviously when he's up forward, but he can also get a goal or two when he is running through the midfield. So out of the forward options this week, I think that if I was to trade in a forward, it would most likely be Shy Bolton. He's a pod selection as well, so I think Zorks is owned by about 20% of coaches. I'll need to double check that, but I'm not sure what Bolton's ownership percentage is currently, but I think that it will certainly rise this week because I've mentioned it so many times already, and I will. There's just such a lack of forward options this year. So if there's anyone out of this crop that I'd be looking to bring into my side, it would be Shy Bolton. But remember that if that mid-time diminishes, his ceiling diminishes as well. Not that he can't score well when he's playing that forward role, but he just won't score consistently, and he won't be going near the 100 mark, in my opinion. So if I select Shy Bolton, I'm doing it hoping that he really does keep that mid-roll. On to the next list in this range. Couple of blokes up the top, absolute traps. Do not look to go near Stevenson or Tom Phillips. They're guaranteed to let you down. Jarman Impey, slight change in role over the weekend. As you can see in the notes section there, attended 25% of the CBAs. So that's really, really different for Impey because we know what he's been doing this year, obviously attacking out of the back line. They're looking to get the ball in his hands. Has been super exciting back there. I think the reason for this, and I think it's only going to be extremely short term, I'd probably expect him to go back to his usual role next week. But remember, O'Meara's out, Wingard's out. Yeah, they've got a couple of injuries running through their midfield. So I think that's why they used Impey in there at stages during the weekend. Definitely a keeper. Jarman Impian, one of our better options this year, to be quite honest. Cozzy Pickett, the most exciting player in the competition at the moment, 415,700. Look, I'd love to be an owner. Now, there was someone down there in the comment section, I forget who it was, in my round review video that said, oh, look, season's over, time to get some pods, and I'm going to get Cozzy Pickett in. And I replied, oh, look, mate, that'll be really awesome being an owner, because I love watching you play each week, and if you're scoring points for your SuperCoach side, that makes it even more fun, I think. But look, I don't know about his consistency. Look, I suppose he's been okay with his consistency. He's got a pretty poor score in round one with a 67, then 85, 121. So only gone over the 100 once, but also had an 85, 96, 70, and a 97 over the weekend as well. So I've been just extremely impressed by him. He's certainly a pod option, but I just don't think that he's going to quite average enough over the season to be in the top 10 averaging forwards. But yeah, really exciting player. Love him. Love watching him anyway. Now, Link McCarthy is a real pod option, but look at the 3-round average of 103. McCarthy, look, he's never, ever been SuperCoach relevant. I think his best season average is about a 66. You can see there currently that his season average is an 84, 3-round average of 103. In regards to his scores, he's sort of gone 85, 58, 74, 60, 134, 75, and then a 99. So only the one really, really nice score along with that 99. Apart from that, it has been pretty mediocre. So I would not look to go near him, but just throwing his name out there. Probably more because I'm a Brisbane fan. I'm just wrapped with what he's producing at the moment. Sidey. Now, this is a bit of a concern because last week his CBA attendance rate was 88%. Now that's virtually been cut into half. So 43% of the CBAs over the weekend. Yeah, just not what we wanted to see, unfortunately, from Steele Sidebottom. If you did get him in last week, yeah, I'm guessing that there weren't a heap of people that really wanted to do it and were overly keen to do it. It was probably more through some necessity, I'd say. But after 119, I think it was last week, he only scored the 85. So not a disaster for a forward this year. What you're expecting to average, it's really, really tough to predict because if his CBA rate is back up near the 70 to 80% mark, then his ceiling increases massively. But when it's at 43%, it's probably not what we want. We need a little bit more than that. So I wouldn't look to trade Sidey in at the moment. He does have that awkward buy, which isn't fantastic. And I just don't think that his role is secure enough. No, I'm not talking about obviously his role in the 22, but that midfield role, that inside midfield role, I just can't really see it. Always been more of an outside type player anyway. His uncontested possessions usually double or triple his contested possessions for a game. So yeah, I don't love this pick, but again, we don't have a heap of forwards that we can actually choose from. Bailey Dale, I probably like a little bit better than Sidebottom. He's 50k cheaper, 6 more on the season for an average, 2 more on the 3-round average. More of a pod. I think he's a better selection if you're looking to go out of the two this week. He's a massive pod, but I've got concerns with Dale. He hasn't got a premium scoring history. Does he maintain that role? I probably think he does because he's looking really good down there. They like getting the ball in his hands. When Bailey Williams comes back, does that affect Dale? I think it may affect Daniel. We'll just have to wait and see. But personally, I couldn't bring him in. But if you're looking for a pod, if you're not interested in some of the other selections that we've mentioned so far, and I don't blame you, then he could come into your calculations. But personally, not for me. Nick Hind, he's another one similar to Dale. So very similar price, 14k difference. Very similar season average, 3-point difference there. 3 rounds, Dale's in better form, but identical break even. Projected score, again, very close. Even the rise, very close. They're both relative pods. Maybe it's a selection out of a Hind and a Dale type. What's the advantage with Hind? He's got a confirmed role. We know what he does each week. Just loves to run with it. They do like to get it in his hands because he can set up a lot of the play and really break the lines. So out of the two, probably I'd lean towards Hind. Although Dale, look, it's maybe a coin flip between those two, but are they going to be keepers? Anyone can be a keeper in the forward line at this stage. You know, if we're talking top 10, there's probably a clear maybe top 5. And then after that, yeah, throw some darts at the dartboard at the moment because it's a lot of guesswork. I'm not wrapped with any of these players, to be quite honest. But Hind, I don't hate as a selection. And Dane Zorko, so I was really contemplating getting him into my side last week. Ended up going with Brayshaw instead, which I think was a really good decision. But he's still certainly a viable option. If May wasn't available this week, I'd be tempted to upgrade the forward line. The reason why I'm not is because I'm losing my words. I'm just not interested in any of the options. But Zorko, I've talked about him a lot pre-season in regards to his durability, but CBAs are pretty good on the weekend. Definitely spending more time in the midfield now. The tag probably goes to him first, now that Neil's out of the side, maybe a McCluggage second. And that's why I love Jared Lyons, as I mentioned before, so much. But you can trade him in, I think, for a 90-plus average. Not sure what happens when Neil comes back in. I think he'll certainly spend a bit more time forward. You've got blokes like Bailey that could be coming in as well. So Zorko, I don't mind him, but purely because there are just no other options. And you can probably tell I am not a huge fan of many of the blokes on this list. I'll quickly run through it. Man up the top, Tom McDonald, 453,600. He does have a green break even there, 98 with a 3-round average of 103. So below that, but he did have a major change in role over the weekend. Tomlinson is now out with a knee. He's done for the season. Ben Brown comes into the side over the weekend. So I think that the obvious move is for McDonald to most likely go back. But if Melbourne cop another injury to a key forward, does McDonald then move forward? Maybe. I think McDonald's going to be Melbourne's swingman. And when you're a swingman, it's great for the coach, but it's not great for SuperCoach because it's hard for players to knock out consistent scores if they're changing from position to position. So this is just an estimate of mine, but I think that he will be used simply where he's needed. And that's not going to be great, I don't think, for his consistency. So maybe the trap's a little bit harsh on Tom McDonald. You know, he's punched out a 136 and a 109, but at the same time, a 50, a 63 over the weekend. Yeah, his floor is pretty low. And if you look at his season last season, yeah, that wasn't great. So, yeah, with the Tom McDonald pick, I don't like it, and I wouldn't be going there. Jeremy Cameron, I should have probably put the trap on him, but we've only seen him for a couple of rounds, so that may be jumping the gun a little bit early. But with a score of only 49 over the weekend, his average is 66, break even 99. You're actually losing cash there, so don't go anywhere near him. But look, who knows, if he hits form in the next month or so, then maybe could be a cheap upgrade option, I suppose, or a downgrade option, depending on how you look at it. Tommy Hawkins, yeah, not a fan of this selection either. Another key forward from Geelong, same as Cameron. They haven't played too many games together, only the 2 so far, so see how their synergy goes, but not interested in Hawkins at this stage. Green, well, we haven't seen too much of the NDHP, which is positive news, but again, we aren't seeing massive scores from Toby Green either, and I'm just not interested at around 500k with Toby Green. Sure, he could be a good pick. 3-round average of 90, almost 100 on the season now, but you're not going to lose a heap of money with Green this week. You're not going to make a heap of money, I don't think. So a selection I'm not looking for, but I can see why some people may be looking at Green themselves. Michael Walters, I reckon he's just a straight-out trap. Nowhere near his best, and I think a lot of that's due to his role. We really need to see him playing predominantly midfield and in obviously good condition body-wise, Michael Walters. He's had a really delayed start to the season. I just don't like this pick at all. Think he's a major trap. Josh Bruce, trap. Aaron Hall, I do have the trap symbol on Hawley. Look, it's mainly due to his scoring history. We know what he's like. He looks $1 million one week, really cheap the next, and just can never find consistent form. It's been a pattern in his career to date, Aaron Hall. I remember when he was at the Gold Coast. I think he was in the Brownlow medal after the first few rounds, and we thought, look at this man. Jeez, he's just broken out. But, yeah, surely enough, just went downhill after that, and just one of those players that's a real tease, I think, and I've never been sucked into him myself, but I know plenty that have. He's left many coaches disappointed over the years. Now, I suppose on the upside, 415,500 isn't a high price for a player if you think that they're going to be a premium and a keeper. He's got a pretty good roll down back for the moment, mind you. And we saw on the weekend that he got a 30 disposal plus game. And I'd go as far to say that he even dominated that game as well. So I can see why people are taking a look at Aaron Hall. And I don't blame you, because we need to be scraping the bottom of the barrel for forward premiums this year. But with a break even of 105, a 3-round average of 92, you can still take one more week to have a look at him. It's not a desperate trade-in, I don't think, this week, Aaron Hall, even after that really nice game on the weekend. So, personally, I wouldn't look to go anywhere near Aaron Hall, and it's probably a little bit harsh having the trap symbol. Now that I'm talking about the positives, maybe that is a little bit harsh. Maybe I should have had the binoculars on him. The binoculars are probably, fairer symbol for Hall, because we've got to respect the form that he's in, but my main concern is, will he be able to maintain that form? That's always been the question with Aaron Hall. Lockie Fogarty, I think he's been a trap. I said at the start of the season that I don't know a heap about this bloke, and I still don't, to be quite honest, but with a 3-round average of 58, that season average is down to an 80, or 79, just below an 80, you just wouldn't look to go there, I don't think. And if you did get him in, you've been sold some fake gold there, unfortunately. Look at this man, Jordan De Goey, under 300k. Some people may be looking at that and going, he's an absolute bargain. Let's just get him in. But don't get him in. His 3-round average is 35. I know he copped an injury, I understand that. Average of 54 in the season. He is just taking up too much of the salary cap, I think, at Collingwood. Let's move on to Texan Walker. So, look, I do have the chopping block symbol on him, but I'm not recommending this week chop him. I'm not saying that at all, because our forward line options this year are absolutely woeful. So, if you've got Walker, I certainly don't think it's the worst thing in the world. The negative to this is, if you don't see him as a keeper and you don't trade him this week, he's most likely going to leak some coin. Now, I don't know what his history is like in the showdowns. I know that at times with these showdowns, where it's the Q Clash, the Derby over in WA, or the clash over in SA between the two Adelaide teams, it doesn't matter where they're at on the ladder at the time, they can always get up for this game. And there's always some really, really close games you'll find during these type of showdowns. But I don't know how well he's going to score against Port. They're going to be angry this week after dishing up what they did, up against the Lions. So Walker for me, could go 100, but he could also go a 60, which is a little bit scary. So if you're looking to trade him this week, I can understand, because you may have not seen him as a keeper, but just a quick cash grab, make 150k. You've already done that, so you could get him out this week. But the main issue is, who do you get him out to? Henny's a trap, just so injury prone. A break even of 139, projected score of 61. He's just going down, down, down. So he, again, may be one of those really sneaky options towards the end of the year if we just can't complete our sides. And Dusty, just hold the man. I know he's got a break even of 157, and that's hard to cop. Particularly for me, I got him in at the absolute worst time. I got him in round 3. So I missed out on those 2 massive scores, and I've just copped absolute nonsense from Dusty. But I'm not going to trade him out now, because he's going to be a must-have forward this year in 2021. Average of 97. He's clearly going to be a top 6. So if you trade him out this week, you're just going to have to bring him in again. And I don't think, the cash that he'll lose will be worth that. He'll certainly lose some cash, you'd assume. So anyway, but again, I said the same thing about Stephen May last week, and look what he managed to punch out. So, if you've got Dusty, 100% hold him, in my opinion. If you don't, then in a week or two, he's going to be a brilliant trade-in at an absolute bargain price. And we'll finish with the forwards under 250k. Not a heap of names on this list that I'd look to buy now. You've probably missed the boat on most of them, I think. Keep in mind, Caleb Poulter will be available next week as a mid-forward, so he could be an option to look at. But Jermaine Jones, played really well over the weekend. Hit the ton, looking to go up 41k if you can hit a projected score of 56. But that was something out of the box, I think. I wouldn't be expecting Jones to be doing that too often. I suppose you could look at him for some rapid cash gen, but yeah, I don't think that he's going to be an overly viable option. Archie Perkins really hit some form and shown, the talent that we know that he possesses, or he has possessed as a junior anyway. Starting to feel more comfortable, I think, at AFL level, and starting to also have a real impact on games as well, which would be really exciting, Essendon supporters. Harrison Jones had a really good game over the weekend, in my opinion, and I haven't watched all the Essendon games this year, but the best game I've seen him play. Took some really nice contested marks, hit the scoreboard, so we were waiting for this from Harrison Jones. Just one decent score in order for his his cash gen to keep pumping up. Alec Waterman, hope he's not a dead rookie. Don't think he comes back anytime soon. Unfortunately, I am a Waterman owner. Miles Bergman, so he's been a pleasant surprise. Break even still really low of 7, so he'll continue to march his way most likely past 250k. R2D2, I brought him in last week and pretty happy with his selection. I thought that he was underscored 5 to 7 points. I was keeping a really close check of the live scores and thought he got a little bit ripped off with his scaling. But didn't notice him a heap during the game. But when I did notice him, he did have an impact. So a couple of really nice tackles, holding the ball decisions. I think it was about 14, 16 possessions from memory. May have even been up to 17. I can't quite recall that. But I'm pretty happy with R2D2 because I think he's got good job security. And if he can go, even with his averages, 65 on field in my forward line, I can't complain with that. Sam Flanders, I think he's a bit of a pooey rookie. Yeah, I wouldn't look to trade him in. Bo McCreary, have you missed the boat on him? Probably, but looks like a decent player. Also with really good job security, I think. Anthony Scott, he's been wonderful. Had him on field last week for his 66. Was on 40 points after kicking the first goal of the match on quarter time. And then, pretty much unsighted for the next 3 quarters. But hopefully the huge impact he had in the first quarter will allow him to stay in the 22. Seems to just make it into the 22 each week, hasn't he, Scotty? Tom Fullerton won't come back in anytime soon. Finn McRae, a pooey rookie. Really disappointing because we had high hopes from Finn this year. Jai Farah, I did have him as the best buy last week, but a little bit of a disappointing round 7. R2 was probably the better option, but Farah, we've seen that he's got some nice scoring potential. Hopefully he can have a nice week this week. Ruckman, he's got to be on the chopping block, but I hope that he comes back soon. We've seen what can happen with someone like a Cozzy, for example. You need one good game, and then your price gen can start to rise again. Same as someone like a Harrison Jones. So I'll be keeping him for now, but certainly could be on the chopping block. Paddy Dudd, just get rid of him. Campbell, I think you've just got to sell now, continuing to leak cash. You probably should have traded him a couple of weeks ago, though. And James Rowe, certainly, without a doubt, on the chopping block this week. I'm not saying you have to sell him, but it makes sense when his 3-round average is 47, break-even 77. There's a 30-point gap there. So if he hits a projected score of 50, and even that may be tough against the power in the recent form that Rowe's been in, he'll look to leak about 11k. So not the end of the world, losing 10k depending on what else you're doing in regards to your trades this week. But if you can, I would recommend getting Rowe out of the side before he leaks too much cash. So that's it for this week, guys. Thanks very much for sticking with me. All the best of luck with your trades for this week. I'm most likely going May and Frederick personally, but there's plenty of other options that you can select from. Many of us will be looking to go and get someone in our forward lines. Tough spot to choose from. Others, you may be looking to fill in one of those midfield spots. And I think in the midfield, we've got some really, really nice options this week. Some of those Uber Primos, though, are starting to come down in price. So maybe in a couple of weeks, it may be best to target those types. But I will leave you there, guys. All the very best, as I said. Hope you're all well, and I'll see you soon in the next one. Cheers, bye.